Hello and welcome everyone to the second video tutorial. And today I'm going to show you how you can create this brick ocean scene in Tooll3. It looks pretty complex, but it's actually, again, really easy. It's basically the ocean made from a beveled cube and a cylinder, which is distributed on 100 by 100 points. And then the second element is the glowing cube. So yeah, let's start. Alright, let's start by recreating one of the two elements. And if I disable the post-processing, you can actually see how simple all of this actually looks, because this is what it looks without any post-processing. We're going to start by creating a random cube which is flying around, rotating. I'm going to recreate the whole scene just on top here. So let's start from scratch. We're going to start by using, actually I'm going to start with loading a beveled cube, which comes with Tooll as a standard mesh. And we want this to glow, so I'm going to put a really bright material on the cube. Now, oops. Now we want to make it move. But it's actually easier if we already have an environment where we can make it move around. So actually, I'm going to switch here and now start by recreating the grid. So we need grid points. And now, so that I'm able to see what I'm doing, I'm going to just temporarily draw the points and pin this. And in the y-axis, we just want 1 point. And on the other two axes, we want 100 points. And we might also want to scale these up. And now I'm going to try to make these move like an ocean. So what I did here is probably, actually I've used fractal noise and used the op called sample point attributes to make them move in one of the axes. So let's recreate that. Sample point attributes, get a noise, fractal noise, and then make this move. On one of the axes. Sorry, I have to look it up myself. So it's 4y, 2 and 0.9 and everything else. Yeah, the rotation, that's what's missing. As you can see here, it seems to be using the texture just from the wrong angle. So I'm gonna have to rotate this by 90 degrees and then also use a higher scaling. So always good if someone already figured this out, even if it was yourself a couple of months ago. Now we can see, and the offset, what did I use here? 0.9, 2.3. And this also has scaling and face. Could I animate the face to make it look like an ocean? Oh, actually, I don't need to play this, but we can just try that and add a time. And then also what I did is I think I didn't actually animate the face, but just made the offset and animated the warp offset, I think. Warp offset and the offset. But I mean, this is fine. And next we actually want there to be bricks instead of these points. So what I'm going to do is draw mesh at points. So we do have the points, but we don't have the mesh yet. So I'm going to load another obj, use cube beveled, and draw the mesh. And now we want to have this little cylinder on top, so I'm going to create this just temporarily, this group, and I'm going to add a cylinder mesh, make it draw mesh, and then change the detail, make it go up, make this smaller and the radius also smaller, not that small. Yeah, this could be a Lego-ish brick. So now, as we can see, this has the input only for a mesh, and now our group is actually a combined mesh. So what we're just going to do, we just use this twice and then group these together. So I'm going to use the points again, and one is going to be our cube, and the other one is going to be the cylinder. And if everything was done right, but it probably wasn't, it's probably going to be huge. And then, yeah, we can see quite an interesting result, but these are just too big. So what I'm going to do is make the size smaller on this one and on this one. And we have our brick ocean. So now we can add a material, set an environment so that we get image-based lighting. And next up, I'm going to create a group here, and then we're going to integrate our cube that's floating around and then emitting light into the scene. So we have the group over there, the cube over here. Now we're gonna make it spin around and just happily fly around the scene. First of all, I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller. So I'm gonna scale this down. And we want it to fly around, so I'm gonna add a transform. This needs to be somewhere around here. And actually, I think it would be smart to use a locator, because what we'll also want to do is we'll want to add a light, and the light of the cube and the position of the cube and the position of the light should of course always be the same. So we're just gonna animate a locator, which we can then plug into both the light and the cube. So locator, and now if we add, for example, a Perlin noise to the position, I don't see the locator because I don't have it connected. I don't know, yeah. Yeah, we want to have it fly around like this, and then also have random rotations. So I'm going to add a Perlin noise here as well. And I'm also going to try to... Actually, I'm just going to push down this ocean. It's much easier than pulling up the cube. So like this. Could also make sure that the cube isn't going up and down as much, but more going in circles or just on one kind of level. So the Perlin noise, the amplitude on this axis, we don't want it to be 0, but we don't want it to be as high, and maybe these can be a bit higher. So now we want to make it spin, so I'm gonna use the Perlin noise here, which I have connected to the rotation. Sorry, I'm a bit all over the place right now. We're gonna multiply the ranges, which are just 1, but if we want it to go all the way and spin around, so I'm gonna make this 360, or maybe you can type in whatever you want. If this is too fast for you, we could make the frequency slower, or maybe you want it to spin really fast, you can make it higher. I'm gonna go with a little bit slower spinning, and I'm also going to reduce the octaves so the spinning isn't sometimes as fast and then going back to a slow, but it's more of a steady spinning in a steady speed. Next up, we're going to add a light into the cube and then use the position of the locator to change the position of the light. So I'm gonna add a light, set point light is the one. Just to make sure that I actually see it, I'm gonna turn it into some weird color, make the decay much higher. So decay means that the area gets smaller. I'm gonna increase the intensity, and as we can see, it's somewhere in the scene, but it's not following the cube. But fortunately, this has a position, and this also has a position, so I'm gonna put this there, and now it's always at the same position as the cube. Gonna put in some saner values, maybe an intensity of 2 to 3, and we're gonna go with a yellow reddish color. So I have set up the environment. I think I have this image. I'm just gonna copy it. I've just used this image from the web. I'm going to put a link to this in the description. And I've adjusted the colors a little bit. Lowered the exposure and the saturation. And then what's really important is always that you put a texture to cube map behind this before you put it into the cube map, because otherwise Tool might crash. So now the scene is lit by this texture, or it should be lit, but as we can see, not really, and we need to enable update live once so that it actually takes the texture, and I think this looks a bit too dull. But yeah, we're getting there. Just remember how stupid this looked before all the nice and fancy post effects. So we have this here. Now we're gonna add a orbit camera. Whoops. Always going back to that old scene. Orbit camera. We're orbiting around this thing. Lowering it a little bit. Something like this, maybe. And of course, an important role is the material of the bricks. And I went for something very neutral, and also what I did is add a little bit of dark blue emissive color to make it look like water in the distance, but just a tiny little bit. So we have the camera, and now it's time to just render this. And what's really important, of course, is the glow, but we also had depth of field, so I'm gonna add depth of field, which also needs the depth buffer. And I'm just gonna manually find the focus distance, turning up the amount, and trying to find just the center there. So that sometimes the cube is out of focus and sometimes it's in focus. Don't really care that much, but you could also use the locator. There's a help. Use locator and the distance to camera output, but we're just skipping this right now. I'm gonna use a adjust colors maybe. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. It's gone. There's another one which is called, oh my god, always having this nice image over there. Color grade is what I used. I'm gonna use this, and of course screen space and ambient occlusion, glow, chromatic aberration. Okay, we're gonna just copy this. So SSAO, super important because it creates these shades between the geometry and makes it look gives the image much more depth. So we're gonna put this, as you can see, this is quite a bit, maybe a bit too intense, but looks much better, I think. And if you think this is too intense, you can just either just make this the black, just turn down the alpha, the opacity, or what you could also do is just use the second of the boost settings and just turn these down a little bit. I usually go with this. And next up, color grade. Color grade. I think that's where most of the magic happens. Not sure if I'm going with one of those presets or if I'm just doing my own. Just fiddling around a little bit. And we're gonna use glow, which has really intense standard values. I think we're getting there. The depth of field is way too much, so we're gonna go with 2. And I also want to blur the background a little bit more because I think that's distracting. So we're going to go into the environment and in the advanced options, background blur. And maybe increase the radius of the point light a little bit more, or the intensity, and reduce the decay. Turn up the intensity, reduce the decay. So yeah, and I mean, this is pretty close. I could end this with chromatic aberration, one of my favorites. Yeah, I think we're pretty close to the original. And yeah, if you like this, if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments and or join the amazing community on Discord. Thanks for watching and have a good one, and see you around, and have fun using Tooll.